The Learning Spaces Collaboratory YouTube series is an opportunity to present stories from the LSC community about planning that focuses on the future of 21st century learning spaces for 21st century learners.
Librarians were among the pioneers in recognizing how the changing context, including emerging technologies and emerging research on how learning happens, was both a challenge and an opportunity to reimagine their future, from the perspective of their programs, then ultimately of their spaces. From her work with the Coalition for Networked Information, Joan Lippincott presents and analyzes examples of programs and spaces within some of these reimagined 21st century libraries.
I'm really delighted to be here with you today to talk about making the case, and in particular focusing on some trends in libraries that I think are very relevant. There are many reasons that libraries are doing renovations. There are very few campuses that can afford to build an entirely new library, so most facilities projects are either renovations or renovation plus addition. And in addition to the solo quiet spaces that libraries are known for and that need to continue in libraries, one of the changes is that they're developing collaborative spaces for active and social learning. Libraries started to bring in technologies probably 30 years ago or so, when most students and even faculty didn't own their own computers or other kinds of technology equipment, and libraries were the place, along with computer labs, that people came to get access. Now they often come to libraries to get access to high-end, either hardware or software. Libraries have been known for access to information. That's where you get the stuff to read primarily. But now there's an iterative process between accessing information and creating new information. And so libraries have become spaces for innovation and for making things, whether they're websites or podcasts, or even physical objects like things you make with a 3D printer. Many libraries during their renovation process are taking the opportunities to enliven what are sometimes ubiquitous white or beige walls, blank walls that you see in many libraries, by putting in artwork, particularly that plays up the institutional or cultural heritage context. And don't underestimate libraries as spaces to build community. We've seen through many studies recently that students don't persist in their four-year academic program to graduation solely by being successful in their classes, by getting good grades. Many of them want to feel a sense of belonging to the university or college that they attend. And I believe that libraries can be a really important component of helping students feel that they belong. However, as libraries renovate, some people walk in these new spaces and say, is this a library? Even some librarians say that, even though places like Learning or Information Commons have been around for decades now, although it's much newer to have maker spaces in libraries. And another trend that's interesting for me to observe is that many new classroom buildings or departmental buildings are putting in informal learning spaces that look a lot like those you'd find in a library learning commons in those departmental buildings, like the School of Nursing at University of Wisconsin-Madison, or this beautiful light-filled space at University of Rhode Island that even features a rare books case. This is the College of Pharmacy building. It has nothing to do with the library. Now, as libraries renovate or build new facilities, we find that many continue to have the traditional large reading room. And so at Purdue University, when they renovated an entire building from top to bottom and created the Wilmoth Active Learning Center, they created this grand reading room for solo, quiet space, while the rest of this enormous building is all informal collaboration spaces and classrooms. One thing that I think is extremely important to understand in making the case for library renovations or new spaces is that they continue to support the core mission of the college or university, and they can continue to exemplify the values that the library represents. So the three-legged stool of higher education, research, teaching and learning, and community service, those core functions or missions remain the same. And libraries providing access to information to all, for developing ways to provide long-term access, stewardship of cultural heritage, which includes print books, digital content, artwork, and all kinds of things, and to foster a welcoming and inclusive community. All of those things remain the same. But when libraries support research today, they're adding things like digital scholarship centers, data centers, visualization, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality facilities. And to support teaching and learning, they're adding spaces not just for solo quiet study, but for active social learning, which is being used in many classrooms, and they need to provide support for that. They can also provide support for things like service learning for students out in the community who should be doing some background research or finding access to maps or photographs to support their work in the community. And of course, libraries have lots of ways to be involved in the undergraduate research programs of their institutions. There are also many rationales for the kinds of changes going on in libraries today. For example, bringing together the expensive technologies. So the library tradition is to offer the technology to all, whereas a makerspace in an engineering building may be just for those students. But we know that students in the arts and in the social sciences also want to use makerspaces. So the library provides access to the whole community. In addition, they have on staff the expertise to work with students and faculty or departments from across the campus with those technologies. And they may even support workshops, credit courses, or certificate programs for students who don't have access to these kinds of technologies in the projects that they're given in their regular curriculum. They may or may not, but libraries can supplement that. So in my view, reconfigured library spaces create new synergies. And at the top of this diagram is new forms of scholarly communication, blended with using those forms in teaching and learning, or in the teaching and learning context, students may develop new forms of scholarly communication, using technology and tools, providing that expertise, and providing the physical spaces. All of this working together to form a cohesive program. In addition, I would love to see libraries placing more emphasis on highlighting the links of spaces to content, which is the real hallmark of libraries. So in the traditional library, you would walk in and you'd see shelves and shelves and shelves of books. So you had this visual representation of content. Now when you walk in and see computers, people get a little bit lost and they don't quite understand what's going on. There are many ways to highlight content, just like this mural on the wall. This is a full-length mural of excerpts from manuscripts at the University of Texas Library. And we can see that sometimes these links to content, these visual representations, are done through digital screens, sometimes through printed out materials, sometimes through cultural representations, through artwork and other kinds of displays. And I'm going to show you individually some of these photos and discuss what I mean by representing the content. So let's represent the products of using specialized software like GIS or Geographical Information System software in libraries, like they're doing at the Duke University, The Edge, or having a showcase of a student photography done through the Media Center at the University of Miami Library. I really love displaying the research process. This is what students need to understand and develop a clear relationship with as they go through their undergraduate and graduate programs. And this faculty member developed this display that's 4 or 5 screens that rotate, showing how he got the data, developed it, cleaned the data, used software to manage it, and then display it eventually in a data visualization. And as more and more people work with large sets of data, we need facilities where we can display that data in visual form so that faculty can use it in their research and their teaching and learning, like this very large data visualization lab at the North Carolina State University Hunt Library, or this beautiful display at the Curve at Georgia State. And when I visited there, they showed faculty and students working on historic Atlanta projects using large maps and photographs from the archives to work on digital projects. Another digital display that caught my attention at NCSU was this very large screen at the entrance that was displaying digital art of a painting from the year 1880 on, showing climate change, with the blue lines representing the cooler periods and the red representing hotter. And to me, this was really an instantiation of STEAM, the blending of art with STEM disciplines. Or looking at traditional things, sculpture of a reader sitting at the top of a stairwell at Brigham Young, or displaying on a large display, the one on the right is probably 5 feet tall, the student who won the poetry contest for the poem of the season at the University of Calgary. All of these are linking to the culture and to the arts. At the Hill Library at NC State, you see on the left how they're displaying magazines and books in their makerspace. I've seen very few facilities that do that, and libraries need to think more creatively about the links to content and technologies, and also about the links to their cultural heritage. So at Connecticut College, Kurt Vonnegut gave a talk when the library originally opened, and they used a blown up portion of his manuscript at the reopening of the library, and they made it into a mural in the staircase, a really beautiful art piece. Or again, representing the cultural heritage of the institution, remember in the earlier slide, I showed the formal reading room at the Wilmoth Learning Center at Purdue. Well, the building itself was the power plant for the university in the old days. And Purdue is a really renowned engineering school. So this is a photo from the archives. Can you see how large this is? The students sitting at the tables in front. So they've used a number of these photos to decorate the space, and it's really compelling. So I encourage all of you to think deeply and make intentional decisions as you plan library renovations, to continue to support the institutional mission, but to do it in new ways, and to continue to display the values of the library and to promote those values, but also to do it in ways that are appropriate to the 21st century.
We invite you to visit the LSC website for further stories from the field about the process of planning, of focusing on users in the context of focusing on the future for learning and learning spaces. Our website provides links to national reports that are major resources for planners at all stages of attending to Spaces That Matter, a portfolio of spaces that work, and collections of essays about audacious questions for planning that go beyond current practice. Information about upcoming activities related to learning spaces within the broader LSC community is also posted. The LSC is for and by the LSC community. Join us.